Okay.
Eeny, miny, moe.
Okay. You know what? Even though we just talked about them earlier, Paul McCartney actually had an album called Hot Hits, Cold Cuts
Oh, I've heard of that one.
in 1975, 1981, in the late 80s. Back in 75, Paul McCartney planned to release a casual album called Cold Cuts and or Hot Hits. Collected a few non-album singles with a bunch of outtakes, including both solo and Wings material. According to Paul McCartney, the label wasn't all that interested in Cold Cuts, and the project never came together. It was revisited in 1981, and again in the late 80s, McCartney decided to abandon it. Given that time span, there are a ton of songs that were at some point considered for an inclusion of Cold Cuts. Many of them appeared on other albums or in some kind of archival fashion down the line. Whatever Cold Cuts could have been, it's probably been harvested for parts. To the point seems unlikely McCartney will ever return to the idea, compile a lost album of 70s, 80s work.
Yeah.
So the label was probably just not that interested.
Probably not. Maybe they heard something that they didn't like. Who knows?
But yeah, we don't like this.
Yeah.
I mean, to bring up an example of that really quick. I mean, the band Chicago, they were gonna put out an album. They did put out an album in the mid 90s called The Stone of Sisyphus.
Yeah,
they were on, and like one sec, they were on Warner Brothers at the time, and basically up until then they were just putting out ballads. And the record company said, "Look, you better put out some ballads because this album is not gonna make us any money. We're trying to make." They're like, "Oh, we're trying to make a creative statement here," and they left. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
I actually have Stone of Sisyphus on CD in my basement.
really, I haven't heard that one personally.
They released it in 2008 after all those years. They did release it in 2008.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to there's on a side note because that's what made me think of that. Because like it's when a record company doesn't like what the artist put out or is going to put out, and they say just scrap it. Good job, Bill.
Thank you.